Welcome to the NFL Saturday Podcast. This is Amp, and I'm here to catch you up on fantasy football for the week, and we'll have some fun along the way. Today, obviously, if you couldn't tell by the intro, Scotty will not be able to join me, but we are still going to have a quick, fun little episode. So today, we're going to do a trending or ending section, where essentially I'll go over players that are doing bad and say if they'll continue to do bad or if I think they'll get better. And then if I think players that are doing good will continue doing good or get worse. So that will be fun. But before we get into that, here is your fun fact of the day. So in honor of the Giants starting 0-60 in point differential, the worst point differential in an NFL season was the 1976 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were minus 287 points. Yes, that's correct. This was the season where they went 0-14, and it was actually when there were two new expansion teams. So it was them and the Seahawks, and they were the one that went 0-14 and had a minus 287 point differential. They didn't get their first win until December 11th, 1977. So the end of the second year was when they got their first win. They were shut out 5 times in the 1976 season, but they were actually shut out 6 times in the next year. So in the second season, they were shut out more. But obviously, the first season, they went 0-14. So definitely, I would say worse. Even this team only gave up 43 points, though, before they scored, because they scored in their third game, and the first 2 games, they were losing 20-0 and then 23-0. So after losing both those games, they did actually score the first points of the game in the third game. So yeah, thought that was interesting. Thought that was a little fun fact. So yeah, next we can get into the main episode. But first, it's time for your
Mr. Unlimited
moment of the week. And I think this one has to go to a play that I actually didn't see right away until Scotty pointed it out and I went back and watched it. But that is that Jordan Love false started on his own QB sneak. And this was at a crucial moment of the game. This is something I've never seen. It was on a 4th and 1 in the fourth quarter with 6:18 left in the game. So if they get this first down, there is a good chance they win the game because they were up by 1. Maybe they were up by 2, actually. I don't remember, but they were up in the game. And if they get the first down, they can continue their drive and end up winning the game. It looked obviously in the moment like it was Jordan Love's fault. It could have been the center's fault, so I'm not sure who to technically blame, but publicly Love did say he took responsibility, so we'll give it to him. It was a pretty crazy play, though, if you haven't seen it. Essentially, he tried to get the snap, and the snap never came, so he just fell over his offensive lineman and caused a false start, which I've never seen before. It was pretty crazy, to say the least. But that definitely, I think, deserved the moment of the week. So now we can talk about our league before we get into the main topic, because this is a segment I wanted to do every week. And the first thing I wanted to talk about our teams, me and Scotty, our matchups, how they went. And I had a pretty brutal loss, because I lost to Hail to the whatever. I scored 138.62 points. Yes, that is 8 more points than the highest scoring team last week, which was myself. So I scored 8 more points after getting the highest scoring points last week, and I lost because Hail to the whatever scored 156.96. So he beat me by 18 points. Yeah, I don't think there was any way to win this, especially with who I was planning on starting. So I'm not really too beat up about that, but it was pretty brutal because he performed pretty significantly above projection, which I'll talk about later. But he had Kirk Cousins, who obviously did insane on Thursday night, Tyler Lockett, who bounced back completely, and then James Conner. James Conner was probably the most difficult one to stomach because he's on the Cardinals and has not looked great, but he had a good day for fantasy. So, fantasy is what is going to be. It's going to happen sometimes. Pretty brutal loss. My team still did amazing though, so I'm excited, and I'm just looking forward. My co-host Scotty ended up losing. He ended up losing to Jay Mucci, who, not a good week for Scotty. We've talked about his team a little bit, and some of his players have been underperforming. So he only scored 84.8 points. Not a good week from him. And he lost to Jay Mucci, who scored 108.36. So, tough loss for Scotty. He's now 0-2, and it's not looking great for his team. I mean, Alexander Madison and A.J. Brown have been killing him, so hopefully he bounces back. And I really do. I think A.J. Brown could get back on track. I mean, we'll see. I might talk about that later. But fun set of games. It was pretty brutal. I actually have had Brian Robinson, and on my bench, I was thinking about playing Kyron Williams over Brian Robinson, and Kyron Williams was the number 2 running back, and Brian Robinson was the number 1 running back on the week. So I actually chose right, but it would have been nice if I started Kyron Williams over Javonte Williams, obviously. But I think it's picking at hairs. I would have probably not done that just based on my team. I wanted to start Javonte Williams, so I will be starting all 3 of them this week, though, it looks like. So that is the plan currently. I'm excited to see how it goes, and I will update you next week, hopefully with Scotty. Now I will go over the top 6 ranked teams in the league. So in first place is Totally Offensive, who is now 2-0. They had a really good week again. I think they scored 150, so they barely scored less than Hail to the Whatever. But they're still in first place because they've had 2 amazing weeks. Hail to the Whatever is in second place now at 2-0, and obviously they scored the most points this week. So, pretty good week for them. And then in third place is the last 2-0 team, which is Moves Mafia. They have not scored a ton of points, but they've managed to pull out some clutch wins. So, good on them. Glad that they're being competitive. I mean, it's exciting when you see these teams who you're not fully expecting to be at the top of the table be at the top of the table. So thought that was interesting. And then in fourth place is me, LA Lambs. And I actually have the most points in the league. So I'm a couple points above Totally Offensive. And hopefully I can, kind of stay up there. It's with the points as the tiebreaker and with a lot of points, it will be easy for me to jump ahead of someone if I win and they lose because I have more points than them. So hopefully I can keep scoring a lot of points. It's not nice to to lose a game early on, but at least I'm scoring a lot of points. So I'll have that tiebreaker to catch back up. In fifth place is Alpha Kappa Olave, who also had a pretty brutal loss. I'll just say that. I might talk about that later, but pretty brutal loss. And then in sixth place, K Money's Moneymakers. This is a team that I expected to come back into the top 6 at some point, and it looks like they already did. So kind of expecting to see Alpha Kappa Olave and K Money's Moneymakers in the top 6 and in the playoffs by the end of the year. They were my top 2 teams in the preseason, so we'll see how their teams do throughout the season, injuries and just performance-wise, but I am excited for that. It's looking good. The playoffs are looking solid right now, and I think there's still some good teams that are outside the playoffs looking in, so I'm very excited to see how the season plays out. Now, the next thing, my 4, awards, I think I called them, but the first one is the surprise of the week. So this is the team that went above the projection the most. So based on projections that the Sleeper app gives, how well they performed against those projections. And Hail to the Whatever gets this award this week because they scored the most points in the league with 156.96, which was 52.71 points above projection. So that was a pretty brutal it looked like I was going to win by a lot before the game started. I think I was like 65% chance to win before anyone played a snap. And I performed above projection, but they just performed significantly above projection, 52 points above projection, which is pretty insane. That's a very well-performing team. Good matchup, to say the least, I think. So good on their team. Hope they keep performing. Obviously, Kirk Cousins, I mentioned earlier. They also had Bijan Robinson, though, who did really well. Tyler Lockett and James Conner, who I also mentioned earlier. So those 4 players kind of led their team to victory. And yeah, it was a pretty brutal loss, but got to give it to them. Got to give them credit, you know. The next award I will give is the team that let the owner down the most. So this is the team that performed below the projection the most. And this week it goes to your other co-host who's not here, Scotty. Scotty knows. And sadly, he scored the 4th lowest points in the league with 84.8 points, which was 28.35 points below projection. And this was just a brutal week. I mean, he didn't have Aaron Jones, so that definitely hurt. And he had to start Jerick McKinnon, who performed pretty significantly below projection. I already talked about Madison and Brown, who have been killing him. And then Jerry Jeudy he had to play, who also performed below projection. So pretty brutal week. We kind of talked about this on the podcast last week, how Thursday started off pretty poor for him. So yeah, not a good week for him, and hopefully his team bounces back. I would love to see him be competitive in this league as well, because I just want to see the competition. I feel like already there's been such good competition in this league, and I'm excited to have more teams in there. So yeah, pretty fun week, but yeah, definitely brutal week for him, I would say. The next award is the closest match, which this one was probably more insane than week 1. I think this has got to be the closest match based on projections and how it was projected to go. And I think going into Monday night, it was incredibly close, and it was fun to keep track of all throughout Monday. And that is Moose Mafia, who beat Alpha Kappa Olave 145.06 to 137.4. So yeah, very close game. And it was the narrowest victory, obviously, but it was also Moose Mafia's second time winning this award. They won the narrowest victory 2 weeks in a row. So they're really cutting it close on these victories. This one really could have gone either ways. Either way, I think it honestly probably should have been Alpha Kappa Olave if people performed as projected, but that's not how things go. And there was one big play that changed the entire game, and that is that Moose Mafia had George Pickens, who had that insane, I think it was 70-yard touchdown catch. So that won him the game. And it was insane. Alpha Kappa Olave also had Hayden Hurst and Chris Olave. So yeah, George Pickens scored 25.7 points, and Hayden Hurst scored 5. Chris Olave 14.6. So really take that touchdown away. Obviously, probably for most George Pickens owners, they felt that if you took that touchdown away, they might not win. So yeah, another one of those matchups, and it was exciting to watch. It was an unexpected touchdown, but it was very thrilling to watch. I will say that. Now the last award goes to the biggest blowout, and this one goes to Totally Offensive, who beat Team N22 155.54 to 81.48. This is actually, again, the second week in a row that N22 got beat by the biggest margin. So, unfortunately, N22 did not notice that they hadn't set their lineup. So they started 3 people that got 0 points. But they did notify the league afterwards, and they apologized. I don't know if apology was needed, but that happens some weeks. People are busy, and hopefully they can check their lineup every week, because they actually have a pretty solid team. They actually had Puka Nacua on the bench and Darren Waller, so they could have gotten another. How many points is that? 15 plus 30, I think it was. So Yeah, it would have been a lot more points and it would have been a lot closer. They wouldn't have won, but it would have been a lot closer. And yeah, I mean, brighter days are ahead if they are able to stay on top of checking their lineup. I know they've already done it this week, but going forward, that's something that is hard for newer users sometimes. I don't know if they're a newer user, but making sure you check all of your lineups, especially if you're in multiple leagues, is pretty hard. So you gotta stay on top of it if you want to be competitive. And also the waiver wires is hard. So yeah, I think there's definitely a limit to how many leagues you should do. And for me, my limit is usually 3, where I can devote my solid full attention to those 3 leagues. And if I add any more leagues on top of that, it usually just ends up being that I'm not putting the full effort into those other leagues. So yeah, that was our league last week, the recap of our league. So now I can get into the main topic of the episode, and that is trending or ending. So I'm going to talk about these players, and I wish Scotty was here to help me, but I will just do my best and give you my opinions on these players. Maybe next week we'll review them and see how I did, see if I was on the right track, what Scotty thinks. But first, I'm going to go over the players that have been performing poorly. And the first is Dameon Pierce. And I think Dameon Pierce will continue to play poorly. So I think he is trending. I think this bad performance is going to be a trend. So he will continue to do badly. I don't love his role right now. I don't think the Houston Texans are going to be running that much. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. Next player, Alexander Madison. And I also think he's trending. I don't think they're going to be using him as much. I think they're going to be throwing so much more. And he also doesn't look great when he has been touching the ball. You would think that when they're throwing so much, the few times they would run, it would be more efficient and getting some big runs, but he really hasn't been. So I think them bringing in Cam Akers actually might hurt his value. I don't think it will be a huge downgrade, but I also think that he just hasn't been performing well anyway. So there is a chance that Cam Akers could take a significant chunk of his work away. The next player is A.J. Brown, and I think this is ending. So I think he'll start to do good. I think he has just had the circumstance of the game scripts not going his way, but last week he almost caught 2 big touchdown plays. I mean, he caught one in the end zone, and it was called back on a holding call by Rashad Penny. And I don't think the holding call really made the play either. I mean, it was there, but I think if Rashad Penny just stood there and didn't even get a full block off, Hurts probably would have been able to throw the ball anyway to A.J. Brown. So that was the first one. And then the second one I think was definitely pass interference on him, and they didn't call it, but he's getting the targets in the end zone. I think he'll bounce back. I think their offense is going to get figured out in Philly. So he's a player that I think is going to turn it around. So I think he's ending. Josh Jacobs has not been performing well, but I think he's ending as well. I think he is going to start performing better. I think this trend will not continue because he has been getting utilized a ton, and I think he'll eventually get those big games and the big plays. And once they start getting some touchdowns to him, I think that will be the big game changer for him in fantasy. So I think he's ending. The next one is Najee Harris, and he has been performing very badly, and I think he is trending. He has looked a lot slower this year, and he just has not been performing well. And especially when you consider his counterpart, Jalen Warren, who has been performing really well in the same essentially opportunities. It's not a different offensive line. It's not different receivers, not different quarterback. So that doesn't look good on him. And I mean, I've seen it before. Jalen Warren looked good last year. He has looked good in the past. So I think Jalen Warren is going to take a lot of work from Najee Harris. And I think it's going to even get worse for Najee Harris. I could see him losing more work, and he's already inefficient right now. So I really think this is a trend that's going to continue. I think he's trending. Next one is Kyle Pitts, who has been performing terribly. And I am sad to say because I own him in a couple best ball lineups, but I think this is trending. I don't think he's going to do well. I think his bad performance will continue to trend. And yeah, I'm not looking forward to it. If I have him in a league, in a redraft, there's a chance I'm cutting him or just looking to pick up someone else. I know it's hard to cut someone after 2 weeks that you put such high draft capital into, but the Falcons are just not throwing it right now at all. And I don't see that going away. I mean, they're winning. So yeah, I think Kyle Pitts going to continue to have bad games, and I'm trying to cut my ties with him. Next player that's been doing bad is Justin Fields, and I think this is ending. I think Justin Fields will be fine and good for fantasy. Now, let me specify why I said that, because I think he looks terrible as a NFL quarterback right now. But for fantasy, I think he's going to run a lot and get a lot of fantasy points. And I do not think they're going to give up on him in the year. I think he's going to play the full year. They may give up on him after this year, but I think he's going to play the full year, and I think he'll be good for fantasy. So I'm sticking with him. If you drafted him high enough where you are going to have to rely on him, and it kind of sucks, but I think he's going to do fine and do well eventually. Hopefully the offense picks up well. Maybe for my bets in our fake betting challenge, maybe he doesn't do as well, but yeah, I mean, we'll see. I have been very against the coaching staff, and I think Justin Fields is performing bad on top of that, but I think there's so many parties that are just doing bad that I think Justin Fields is going to take things into his own hands, and I think he's going to run. And I don't know if it will be good for actual football and the team, but I do think it will be very good for fantasy. So yeah, I think that's ending. Now we're going to go into the players who have been performing very well or just above expectation, I guess. And for these, it's going to be the opposite. So trending will mean that they will continue to do good, and ending will mean that they will not do as good. So first up is Puka Nacua, and I love Puka. I drafted him in actually a couple best ball leagues, I think 3 lineups. And I also drafted him in a redraft league with the last pick in the draft. And I think he is trending. He looks amazing. He has been catching so many balls. He looks like he's replacing Cooper Kupp while he's out. And we don't know how long Cooper Kupp's going to be gone. But even if he comes back, I think Puka could slot into that Robert Woods role. And when Cooper Kupp comes back, we don't know how healthy he's going to be. So I think Puka could take some workload away from Cooper Kupp, as crazy as it sounds. But even in the pre-draft process, Puka looked great. He looked good. He looked like a good talent. And he kind of fell to the Rams. But now the Rams are desperate, and they're using him so well. And he just fits right into that mold that Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford love. So I think Puka is trending. I think this will continue. I am in love with, if you have Puka Nacua, start him every week until he stops doing good. And I'll give him a little bit of a leash. I'll give him even one bad week before I take him out of my lineup. So yeah, I'm trending on Puka Nacua. Next up is Kirk Cousins, who has been doing very well. He's actually the quarterback 1 right now. Yes, he's the quarterback 1. And look, I think Kirk Cousins is ending. I hate to say it, but I don't think he'll do as good. I think he will do fine. I think he'll be a fine quarterback, but I think these 2 weeks will probably be his best weeks from the season. I don't think he'll continue to put up these fantasy numbers that he's been putting up. He's been throwing so much, throwing so many touchdowns. And I don't think he'll continue it. I don't think they will have to. Hopefully they do start winning some games, but yeah, I don't think he'll be continuing to be the number 1 fantasy quarterback. And I would say probably not even top 5. That may be bold, but yeah, that's my thoughts. Next up is Jordan Love, who's been performing really well. He has not been doing insane numbers like Kirk Cousins, but he's doing very well for fantasy. And I actually think this is trending. He's going to be getting Christian Watson back soon, and I think he'll actually start doing possibly better. I mean, it's hard to say how well he'll do with Christian Watson, but I think he's only going to get better as the season goes on and he gets more comfortable. So I'm very confident in Jordan Love, and I like him a lot for fantasy right now. And I think, especially in 2 QB leagues, he's a very solid start every week. Now, Kyron Williams is up next, who has been doing very well. He had 2 very good weeks, and this is, of course, the Rams running back. And I think he's also trending. I think the Rams look very good right now. They just traded away Cam Akers. There was already no one, like, going into the season, people were so high on Cam Akers because no one else was there in the backfield, but Kyron Williams was there. And besides Kyron Williams, no one else is really a solid running back in the room. So I think he's trending. The Rams look good again. I think he'll be getting a ton of opportunities. And yeah, I really like Kyron Williams. I have him in my team, obviously, I mentioned earlier, so I'm starting him. Next up is Brian Robinson, who I think is trending. I think that he won't continue to do as elite as he's been, but I think he'll be a good play. And based on where you drafted him, I think he'll outperform that. I think he will be a starter weekly even, because the Washington Commanders do look like they have an offense. I mean, I'm starting him this week, which I know is a little bold against the Buffalo Bills, but I think he'll get some solid production and he could sneak his way into the end zone. So I'm pretty confident in Brian Robinson, and I think he is trending. I think this will be a trend that continues. Next up, Raheem Mostert, who has been very good. He's been a top running back as well. And personally, sadly, I think this is ending. I see multiple Dolphins running backs coming back, and I don't think Raheem Mostert will be consistent. I think he'll be inconsistent because you're never going to know who's going to have that big game. And on top of that, Raheem Mostert is a high-speed player. He's going to have these breakaway runs that score him a lot of points. And yeah, they're going to feed him some carries, but if he doesn't get one of those breakaway plays, it will be a low-scoring game. And in normal fantasy, that's not something you want. In best ball, he's going to still be a solid pick because you're not going to have to choose. But yeah, in normal redraft for leagues, I think it's ending, and I would try to sell high if you can. Next up is Mike Evans, who has been performing really well with Baker Mayfield, and I think he's trending. I think he looks back. He actually looks solid this year, and I think I've talked about Chris Godwin before and how I was high on him, and now Mike Evans is kind of taking a lot of that work. So I still like Chris Godwin, but Mike Evans also is very solid. So I think the whole Bucs team is definitely going to start outperforming a lot of people's expectations. I mean, maybe not mine, but I still think those players will do very well. And yeah, I'm excited to play them probably every week at this point. Next up is Nico Collins, who has been performing very well. CJ Stroud's been throwing a ton, and that's why I think Nico Collins is trending. Last week, Houston had the most passing yards in the NFL, and a lot of the work went to Nico Collins. It was pretty crazy. I mean, CJ Stroud has been doing pretty well throwing the ball, and I think he'll keep throwing. The Houston Texans are going to be down in most of the games, so I really like Nico Collins going forward. And it's surprising. I never would have thought I would say this, but I think he's trending. Next up, TJ Hawkinson, who has been the number 1 tight end, maybe number 2 tight end on the year to Hunter Henry. I think he's 1 or 2. I don't know exactly. Maybe it depends on your scoring, but I think Hawkinson's number 1 over Hunter Henry. But I'm pretty sure it's close. And TJ Hawkinson, I think, is trending. He's been very good. I don't think he'll likely be the top tight end once Kelsey and Mark Andrews come back, but I think there is a chance. I think he'll continue to be solid. It looks like he's very involved, and I know it's kind of counterintuitive for me to say Kirk Cousins is ending, but I think Hawkinson will be solid. I think in the past, a big part of his issue was the inconsistency, and I think he'll be more consistent this year. So I'm excited about that. And next up on the tight end list is Hunter Henry, who I actually think is trending. He looks like he will keep getting targets. There's no talented receivers on the Patriots, so I think Hunter Henry is going to continue this going forward. I think he's a target machine. And yeah, I think he's a very, very solid play if you need a tight end. And I would be picking him up. I would start him over Kyle Pitts any day of the week right now. So, yeah, definitely a Hunter Henry fan going forward, and I think he's trending. Now, the last player who has been performing well, and I think will not be performing as well going forward, is Sam Laporta. So, yes, I kind of spoiled it, but I think Sam Laporta will be ending. I do not trust rookie tight ends inconsistent. I don't trust them to be consistent. So I think going forward, Sam Laporta is a risky play. I wouldn't play him. I think he's ending, and I'm not playing him. I'm worried. I think he'll have some solid weeks. So if you're really desperate, you can play him and hope. But I think it's going to be one of those situations similar to last year with Greg Dulcich, where he performed very sporadically, and you never know when he's going to do well. And it was just not fun to have him on your team. And I don't think Sam Laporta will be either by the end of the year. So that's the whole segment. Hope you enjoyed Trending or Ending. But now it's time for Ask Anissa, where I ask my wife Anissa a fantasy football question, and she knows nothing about football. So, Anissa.
Yeah.
Which player are you most worried about for fantasy football? A.J. Brown, Josh Jacobs, or Justin Fields?
Justin Fields for sure.
Justin Fields? Ooh, okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Justin Fields.
Lock it in.
Lock it in. Now it's time for the book club, where we pick one guaranteed bet this week and put our money where our mouth is. And by money, I mean fake money, because it is a fake money betting challenge where we start with $100K and we try to earn it up to $1 million or go broke. And if you make it to $1 million, you win. And if you go to zero, you lose. So currently, Scotty is down to $77K, but I am up to $251. And I was actually up higher, but I lost a couple things in a row. Like $30K in a row, I think. But I did have a good day on last Sunday because I had Anthony Richardson with 2 rushing touchdowns. So yeah, huge $50K bet. I have been on fire, but starting to cool off because I lost $30K in a row on Monday and then Thursday. But what can you do? I had a pretty brutal Jamal Williams injury where I bet him to get 2 touchdowns, and then the backup came in and got 2 touchdowns. I think it was Tony Jones Jr. So yeah, Tony Jones Jr. got 2 touchdowns as the backup, which definitely could have been Jamal Williams. I won't say probably would have been because you never know. But yeah, definitely a brutal loss. That said, though, I am excited to talk about my guaranteed bet for the week because my 10K bet will be on Tyreek Hill to get, this is a parlay, by the way, so he has to get over 88.5 receiving yards and over 6.5 receptions. And this is plus 118. So 10K bet and you will profit, or I will profit 11.8K if he hits it. So yeah, 88.5 receiving yards and 6.5 receptions. So I really believe this will happen. I mean, with Waddle likely to be out, he hasn't practiced all week. I think he'll be out. I am pretty confident that Tyreek Hill will be targeted elitely, and yeah, that's why I'm betting on him to do so well. I'm really excited to see the game. I have Tyreek Hill on my fantasy team, so yeah, I'm excited. Now let's talk about the matchups, and the first matchup I am excited about is the Chargers versus the Vikings. I am very excited about this game. I think the fantasy points will be out the wazoo. I think, even though I said that I think Kirk Cousins is ending, I think this week he will do very good because he will probably need to throw a lot. And yeah, I mean, the Chargers are going to score a lot of points too. I'm excited for Mike Williams, who got a lot of targets last week, even though he didn't do great. I think he's going to do great this week. I think Keenan Allen's going to do good. I think Joshua Kelly might do good. And for the Vikings, I think Hawkinson will do good. I think Jefferson, Addison, and even Cousins. So I'm excited for everyone in this game. I'm playing them all. And yeah, excited, to say the least. Next is Buffalo versus Washington. So I'm excited for this game because I want to see how good Washington is. They play a good defense, and will Sam Howell continue to do well? Will the Commanders be able to stay competitive in this game? Who against the Bills, who have not looked great on offense? So I'm excited to see it. I think for fantasy, I'm having to start Sam Howell in a 2 QB league, but I think there is definitely a chance that you're not playing Howell this week because it is a pretty brutal matchup. And if you're streaming QBs, which Sam Howell right now is a streamer, so you could probably pick up another quarterback that has a better matchup and will do better. But I'm excited to see it. I'm hopeful that there will be some points. I think Brian Robinson will probably do well. And then on Buffalo, obviously Josh Allen you're playing. Obviously Diggs you're playing. Gabe Davis you're probably playing. I think you will be playing, and then maybe Kincaid because Dawson Knox is out. But yeah, I'm excited for that game to see how it is. Next game I'm excited about is the Patriots versus the Jets, and I'm not excited for fantasy, but I'm excited to see how many picks will be thrown, if there will be a defensive touchdown, what's going to happen in this game, because this is going to be a crazy defensive game. I think that both offenses will struggle. The Patriots have not looked good on offense last week. They did not look good, which is funny because they look so good against the Eagles, which is why I'm a little worried about the Eagles as an Eagles fan. I'm a little worried about their defense right now. They're giving up a ton of points to opposing teams, especially for fantasy. So you want to play fantasy players against the Eagles. But that said, yeah, the Patriots not looking great on offense. Jets, great defense, will probably be able to hold the Patriots to low points. And then the Jets offense has looked putrid, and the Patriots defense has looked great. So, yeah, I am excited to see which defense performs better and gets them the win. Next and last game I wanted to talk about was the Eagles versus the Buccaneers. I think this game is secretly has a chance to be the highest scoring game on the week, because the Eagles defense does not look good. They give up a ton of points, and especially to fantasy players. Like, I think for fantasy, the Buccaneers players are going to do great. Godwin, Evans, where the Eagles get beat pretty heavily, I think will do great. And that's why I'm worried. I think this will be a closer game than people expect, and it's going to be very high scoring in my opinion. So yeah, that's all the matchups. I don't have any other things to talk about, so I will go straight into your strong opinion of the day. And that is that the NFC is better than the AFC this year.
Thank you for listening to the NFL Saturday podcast. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and TikTok at NFL Saturday.